Hello everybody, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films and think better about ourselves because we know so much better than what is in the films. Sometimes, I don't know. Anyways, I'm not at the archive because I'm at the archive. And what I'm doing at the archive is moving, along with my assistants and interns, basically 15,000 films off-site, and we decided to rent a cargo van all week, and to commit to this, I said that I would just move films this week, and so that's what we're doing. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of schlepping, and I'd be all sweaty, and it just wouldn't be fun. So tomorrow I'm going to try to show you some footage, but all week we're going to be pre-recorded because we're just going to be moving films. But today we're going to watch films about trucks because I thought I was going to rent a truck, but a van was better suited to what we needed. So we're going to watch the film Truck Driver, Encyclopedia Britannica film, then Moving Things on Land, which I can't remember who made that film. Is that Cornette? Maybe. Then Transportation, the United States, which is a March of Time film that was probably shown in theaters at one point as a short subject before a feature. Then Truck Transport on That Long Haul, which is a film that we digitized for Craig Baldwin, who's based in San Francisco, who's also a collector. And yeah, he sent this to us, and I think it maybe just cuts off. I'm not sure. Then finally, this is a film I've shown in the past, but ERDA Transportation Safeguards, which is a wonderful film about how to transport radioactive materials across the United States in a truck. Fascinating stuff. And I love niche things like that. And this was made by Sandia Labs in Albuquerque. So, anyways, I hope that you enjoy what you're watching and just think about the fact that we're picking up a stack of film, moving it into the van, picking up a stack of film, moving it into the van, and then we're driving to the storage unit and doing the reverse. I hope you enjoy the show. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up, hit the like. You can also support us via the super thanks button in YouTube, and also the ko-fi.com/avgeeks and patreon.com/avgeeks. That money will go towards buying snacks and cool beverages for my workers and interns. Everybody have a great rest of your Monday, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.
Bye, honey. See you day after tomorrow.
Goodbye, Tom.
So long, kids. Mind your mother now. Bye, Slugger. Take good care of that truck now.
Bye, Tom.
Bye. Bye.
Another overnight trip begins for Tom Dwyer, a truck driver.
Hi, Mike.
Oh, hi, Tom.
What have you got for me today?
You've got a hot load to Sandusky, Ohio. Tom, you're going to get your regular tractor, 3880 and 1136.
Okay, I'll leave as soon as I'm loaded. So long, Mike.
Have a nice trip, Tom.
This big trucking terminal in Chicago is one of many where thousands of tons of freight are shipped all over the country. Big cans of paint, tables in their shipping cartons, heavy tractor tires, new automobile wheels. These and other shipments are sorted and packed into trucks bound for many different cities. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Lansing, Michigan, Toledo, Ohio. And here's Tom Dwyer's truck for Sandusky, Ohio, loaded and ready to go. The rear part of the truck is the trailer. The front part with the motor is the tractor. It's backed into place by a yard man. The yard man connects the air brake hoses from the tractor to the trailer. This gives him brake control over both sections of the truck. Then he locks the two sections together. The front trailer supports are cranked up. They're used only for parking. Then the yardman drives the truck to the checkout station. Yardmen do all the driving inside the terminal. The truck must be ready for the open road before Tom starts his driving. This man is pumping in 120 gallons of gasoline. Tom always stands by to keep watch on his own truck. This man weighs the trailer to make sure it's not too heavy or unbalanced. Then the trailer doors are sealed with a metal strip. Tom checks his safety equipment: red signal flags, red flares, flag stands, spare headlight kit, and a loaded fire extinguisher. Looks like everything's in good shape. Now Tom is on his way. Destination, Sandusky, Ohio, 340 miles east of Chicago. In trucking language, Tom is carrying a hot load. That is, a load that must be delivered by a certain time. He's expected to be there by 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. Much of the nation's goods are moved by truck. Tom passes many trucks on his way out of town. Long-distance giants like his own. City trucks of many kinds. As he leaves Chicago, Tom crosses the state line that divides Illinois from Indiana. For part of his trip, he's going to travel on the Indiana State Toll Road. On this road, he can keep his truck moving without having to stop for cross-traffic. Drivers must pay a toll to use this road. Tom will pay when he leaves. Now he receives a pass showing where he entered the road. Indiana State Police patrol the road. Each state has its own police force. Here's a truckload of paper leaving the toll road on its way to Chicago. And here's a truckload of new automobiles from Chicago on their way east. On the toll road, it's smooth driving for Tom, many miles without a stop. Good modern roads are a welcome sight to truck drivers. Fine highways like this one are being built in many parts of the country. Often they're called by different names: toll roads, turnpikes, freeways, parkways, superhighways. All of them mean safe, steady driving for long-distance trips. Just before sundown, Tom stops at one of the service stations on the toll road. This is called a safety stop. Truck drivers are required to make them every 3 hours. While Tom rests, a serviceman at the station checks his truck from bumper to bumper. Safety is very important to such drivers, for their lives depend on it. The serviceman looks over Tom's engine carefully. He checks to see whether there's enough oil in the engine. He looks at the radiator to make sure there's enough antifreeze mixture in it. Service like this helps to keep the truck from breaking down on the open highway. The serviceman finishes by pounding all 14 tires with a hammer. He can tell the air pressure just by the sound. After his rest, Tom is ready for the road again. He still has 250 miles to travel before 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. Although Tom is carrying a load that weighs about 16 tons, his truck moves fast and is easy to handle. Shortly after dark, Tom comes to the place where he's going to turn off the toll road. This is where he must pay toll for using the road. Tom must drive more slowly now. The road goes through small towns. There are traffic lights and crossroads. These cause many more stops and starts. Midnight is Tom's mealtime, and at last he sees a welcome sight. This restaurant is one where truck drivers often stop. It serves good food, and there are hotel rooms where drivers on long trips can sleep. Tom sees some of his friends here. Here's one who drives for Tom's company. He says he ran into snow coming in. Tom orders his food. Tom relaxes and rests and enjoys his meal. Hot food, a cup of hot coffee, and it's soon time to be off again. These are lonely hours, the hours after midnight, when a driver wishes he were home with his family, safe, warm, and asleep. With the fire out, Tom makes sure that the driver is all right. The driver explains that he must have rounded the curve too fast and went off the road. Tom offers to get some flares and shows the driver how they're lighted. He tells the driver to put them around his car and out on the road, too. It's important to have plenty of warning lights when a car is parked near the highway. The driver thanks Tom, but to Tom, it's just part of his job. He'll send back help from the next town, which is only a few miles down the road. Just before dawn, it begins to snow. Tom must drive more slowly, but he's still making good time. By the time day breaks, he's almost at the end of his trip. He pulls into Sandusky right on schedule and brings his truck into the terminal. The seal is broken, and now the big load of freight which Tom brought from Chicago, 16 tons, 32,000 pounds, will be unloaded onto the platform. The men there will separate each shipment according to where it goes in the city. Tom's all-night trip is over. He's done his job well. But the men of the trucking terminal and the city truck drivers are just beginning their day's work. Many, many things will be delivered by truck today. Painting supplies, lumber and construction materials, bread and coffee cake for breakfast tables, ready-mixed concrete for new roads, milk, cream, butter, and eggs. Yes, and the United States mail, too. The trucking industry works around the clock. Tom will sleep today in a nearby motel, while his trailer is loaded for his return trip tonight. By tomorrow morning, Tom will be nearing Chicago with another 16 tons of freight. Things made in Sandusky and other Ohio towns, being sold to companies in Chicago and beyond. And best of all, Tom will be driving home to his family.
Bad for Jim, but what's bad for Jim is good for Bobby Cooper, who's going to get a nice big collection of comic books. He is, that is, if they can solve an unpleasant little transportation problem. However, something called friction seems to be holding things up. Wouldn't this be a wonderful world if suddenly there were no friction to hold things back? Just imagine, a box of comic books would slide down a driveway as though the driveway were slipperier than ice. But just think, all of the shoelaces in the world would suddenly come untied. And all of the houses would start to fall apart. Everything would feel slippery, even sandpaper. Imagine the things that you wouldn't be able to hold. Think of the meals that would slide off tables. Think of the people who wouldn't be able to get into their houses. People who were stopped couldn't get started. And people who were started couldn't stop. At least for a while. What is it that keeps this box from sliding downhill? You think of pavement as being fairly smooth. When you look at it closely, you find that rough little bumps cover the surface. In the wooden box, there are bumps and hollows and splinters, too. The rougher two surfaces are, the more the rough places catch at each other. And the heavier the load, the more the rough places catch at each other. This catching and dragging is friction. Though friction can be useful, Jim and Bobby sometimes wish they didn't have quite so much of it. People have to overcome friction every time they move something from one place to another. And everything that you have has been moved from someplace else. Everything in your house, the things your house is made of. Everything in a city except the earth it stands on has been moved there from someplace else. Moving things is so important that many people have worked at ways of making moving easier and faster. What are some of the ways the boys might use to make their moving job easier? Let's give them some runners. Aha, easier. There's less friction because the runners are smoother than the box, and there are fewer rough places to catch on the paving. There would be still less friction if we could smooth the paving, too. Let's do something else for the boys. Let's sprinkle some powdered soap on the driveway to smooth it a little. Easier yet. Smoothing the road all the way to Bobby Cooper's house would take a lot of soap. But we make many things easier to move by making surfaces smooth. Let's give Bobby and Jim something to make their moving job still easier. Something they can use for rolling. The box moves so easily now that it hardly needs to be pulled. Usually, there is much less friction when things are moved by rolling rather than by sliding. However, there's a problem about moving things for any distance on rollers. Someone has to keep bringing rollers up to the front of the load. Wouldn't our highways look strange if a person were out busily putting rollers in front of each car and truck? Rollers are sometimes used to move things when distances are short. More often, the rollers are fixed in place and the load is moved over them. And sometimes, of course, things are moved by rolling when they are themselves rollers. If we're really going to help transport those comic books, we'd better give the boys some rollers that will stay attached to the load. Instead of full-length rollers, we'll give them 4 thin rollers. Now we'll attach 2 axles under the crate and put on the rollers. And maybe we'd better stop this talk about rollers and begin calling them wheels. Now we have a new problem. We've cut down the friction against the ground, but we have friction in a new place. Here, where the rough axle rubs against the rough wood of the wheel. Of course, there's much less friction than pulling without wheels at all, but there's still plenty. This is the way many carts used to be made. There's so much rubbing between this kind of wheel and axle that the cart is hard to move. The rubbing wears away small pieces of wood, and finally the axle may break. The boys' job would be easier if we gave them axles and wheels made out of metal. Metal is harder and can be made smoother, so there's less friction between the axles and the wheels. But even metal has little rough places that you could see only with a microscope. Though you can't see the rough places, you can hear them rubbing. And the friction slows the wheel down quickly. There'll be less friction if we can cover the surfaces with something to keep them from touching. Just what we were looking for. An oiled wheel works better because the oil fills the tiny bumps and there's less friction. Now listen. And see how much longer it turns. And now I suppose you think we ought to let the boys get along with their load of valuable literature. Not yet. We're going to give them some wheels that are even better. Ball bearing wheels. In this kind of wheel, a ring of steel balls keeps the wheel from rubbing against the axle. The wheel turns on the balls and the balls roll around the axle. And of course, oil helps at the same time. Whenever you see a wheel or a machine that runs smoothly and easily, you can be fairly sure that the moving parts run on ball bearings or roller bearings. Now let's get this load on the road. But this time, let's do it in style. Jim is going to be able to use friction if he needs to stop. And Bobby has to use friction to help him get started. But they've removed most of the friction between the load and the ground. Wheels like these are one of the best solutions that people have found for moving things on land. I suppose you think that now the boys are going to settle down to a quiet afternoon of reading comic books. Don't you believe it. Bobby's mother isn't going to let the comic books in the house either. And after all we've done to help them, a fine thing.
And developed, the vast land areas which stretch almost 3,000 miles across the country were opened up for settlement and development through transportation. As railroads were put through from one end of the land to the other, great cities sprang up. Along the 4,900, through such ports flowed the goods which the U.S. needed to grow and become great, in exchange for the products of America's own farms and factories. And out of this thriving trade grew the U.S. merchant marine. Today, U.S. merchant vessels carry 75% of the nation's exports and some 25% of its domestic freight. Plying not only the seas, but the Great Lakes as well, they are a vital link in the commercial life of the country. While far less important than they were when the U.S. was expanding, river steamers, particularly on the broad Mississippi, still carry a sizable share of freight and passenger traffic. Among the newer passenger-carrying businesses in the U.S. today are the nation's bus lines. Because they charge less than their competitors and are able to reach not only the larger cities, but also those areas not served by other means of transportation, the bus's share of passenger traffic in the past 2 decades has more than doubled. For many of the same reasons that bus transportation is flourishing, the trucking industry in the past 20 years has become increasingly important. Trucks are able to carry freight cargoes everywhere, and today some 5 million of them are rolling along the highways and byways of the U.S. Though the percentage of freight carried by truck is still small compared to that carried by rail, it is constantly growing. For trucks are fast around short hauls and in many cases can handle shipments at lower rates. Newcomers in the freight carrying industry are the cargo airlines, most of which have been established only since the war. But with their capacity strictly limited, their chief sales point is speed, a vital consideration to many shippers, particularly those dealing in perishables. In the field of passenger service, the airlines offer competition to both the bus lines and the railroads. With their personnel, equipment, and service already above pre-war standards, with air travel cheaper in many cases than Pullman travel, airlines are cutting more and more heavily into the railroad's luxury passenger trade. To keep the public flying, to ensure its comfort and safety, the airlines are introducing new and better types of planes. In addition, they are constantly experimenting with new devices which will add to the convenience of air travel. For theirs is a young business still in the process of growing and establishing itself. And it is operated largely by men still too young to be ridden by conservatism or complacency. In the few years in which they have been operating, the airlines have discovered that their efforts to improve comforts and services have attracted a steadily increasing number of passengers. For though speed is probably the chief consideration of the flying public, another inducement is the luxurious appointments of the newer planes. To the many millions of Americans who travel every year, railroads are a simple necessity, for they still remain the backbone of the nation's transportation system, the principal means of getting from place to place. In the century since the first American railroad was built, the transportation of passengers and freight has become one of the nation's great industries, an industry which serves every citizen and reaches into every part of the country with almost 500,000 miles of track.
All aboard.
Today, though U.S. railroads are doing more business than ever before in peacetime, though they have behind them years of profitable wartime operations, they are in precarious financial condition, largely the result of rising costs, which have increased more rapidly than income. Despite this, despite the fact that the railroads are still suffering from the physical deterioration which set in during the war years, they are moving 24,000 freight trains and 17,500 passenger trains every day. To keep these rolling in safety, the railroads must work continually to perfect traffic control devices. No longer do they rely solely on automatic signals. Adding to the safety and efficiency of transportation by rail are such innovations as radio and the induction telephone, by which the engineman in his cab can keep in constant communication with signal towers along the way, with trains on other tracks, and with crewmen in the car at the end of his own train. The operation of American railroads directly affects the daily life of every American. To keep a single U.S. citizen supplied with the basic necessities, an average of a ton of freight must be transported more than 4,000 miles each year. The hauling of freight accounts for 77% of the railroad's gross income. But though the freight load today is the heaviest in peacetime history, there has existed an acute and constantly growing shortage of freight cars, with worn-out cars being retired faster than new ones could be made available. Of the 1 3/4 million in operation, well over 1 million are more than 20 years old, and of these, nearly a third are more than 30 years old. The entire U.S. industrial establishment depends in great degree upon rail transportation, and any serious breakdown would have a catastrophic effect upon the national economy. To keep trains moving, the railroads work ceaselessly at the monumental job of maintenance. At regular intervals, every locomotive must go to the shop for checking and repairs. After every 100,000 miles of operation, most locomotives are completely stripped down and rebuilt inside and out. The steel tires are sweated off and renewed. When locomotives are remodeled, they may receive the same series of speed and efficiency tests given to new types. Like rolling stock, roadbeds suffered from inadequate maintenance during the war, and today the railroads are still working hard to make up for the years of enforced neglect. On first-rate roads, every foot of mainline track is inspected at least once a day, and sections which show flaws are promptly repaired or replaced. To lick the problems today confronting the railroad industry is a matter of serious concern to most of its executives. Among them, a wealthy ex-member of the New York Stock Exchange, Robert R. Young. A relative newcomer to railroading, Young has taken upon himself the role of critic and prophet to the whole industry. In the 10 years since he took over control of the Chesapeake and Ohio and several associated railroads, Young, in company with his advisors, has spent much time out on the line observing the operations of his railroads at first hand. The Chesapeake and Ohio had long been in an enviable position because of its lucrative business hauling coal from the rich mining regions of West Virginia and Kentucky. Young found that with this highly profitable freight business as its mainstay, the road was paying only secondary attention to its passenger operations, which brought in little or no profit, a condition paralleled on most other railroads. Out of his observations, Young has become convinced that passenger travel can be made highly profitable, despite the competition of planes, buses, and private automobiles. Urging a change of policy upon the rest of the industry, Young contends that railroads have progressed scarcely at all since the first decade of the century, when passengers put up with discomforts and bad service because there was no alternative. The cars in common use today are little better than those of 40 years ago, Young maintains, so far as the convenience of passengers is concerned. As an example of what can be done, Young has introduced on the C&O 2 luxuriously appointed streamliners between Grand Rapids and Detroit, which have brought passenger travel on this route up to 76% above normal. Although, as other railroadmen were quick to point out, Young's streamliners already had their counterparts on many other roads, some of his changes were true innovations. Instead of discouraging the buying of tickets on trains, Young encouraged it on all his lines, thus relieving passengers of the irksome necessity of standing in long queues at the ticket window. In addition, he issued credit cards entitling the holders to charge their fares. Convinced that he understands the public's likes and dislikes, Young has introduced many other improvements in service, designed to make the trip more palatable to the customer. On the Chesapeake and Ohio's crack train between Washington and Cincinnati, Young has installed a movie theater on wheels. Today, America's railroads are awake to the need for progressive action. Passenger cars and equipment are being redesigned. New types of coaches going into service on the Pennsylvania and other major roads are more comfortable and attractive than the general run of parlor cars. Attention is being paid to any device which will help make coach travel more agreeable. At the same time, new sleeping cars are being designed and built, which will eventually replace all the old-time rows of curtained berths with private staterooms, handsomely appointed and decorated. But it is in the field of motive power that the most revolutionary changes in railroading are on the way. Seeking to make the most efficient use of the cheapest fuel, 9 railroads and 4 coal companies have organized the Locomotive Development Committee, which is working on a coal-fired gas turbine engine. Results so far indicate that this new type of engine will be more than 3 times as efficient as the old steam locomotive, and because of its expected lower operating costs, is likely in time to replace all other types. In the meantime, the coal-burning steam locomotive is being superseded by the oil-burning diesel-electric, which, though twice as costly to build, is far more efficient and less expensive to maintain. More than 9 out of 10 of the locomotives currently on order by the nation's railroads are diesels. Thus today, America's railroads are hopeful of solving their problems. And in the process, it is the passenger, so long neglected, who stands to benefit most in the higher speed and greater comfort with which he may soon be able to travel on any road anywhere at the broad expanse of his country.
Trucks carry many of the things we need. This is a flatbed truck. It is pulling a flatbed trailer. This load of lumber will be used in building new homes. A special kind of truck carries automobiles from the factory to the automobile dealer. This truck is called an auto carrier, 5 automobiles. Other types of trucks are made to carry gasoline. These trucks are called tankers. This tanker will deliver gasoline to a filling station. This is a sleeper truck. It has 2 drivers. While one man drives, the other man sleeps. The sleeping compartment is behind the cab. Truck trailers are loaded at a truck terminal. This is a truck terminal in a big city. Small trucks pick up cargo from many shippers in different parts of the city. They bring this cargo to the loading dock at the terminal. At the truck terminal, the cargo is sorted. All cargo that is being put in this trailer is going to Spokane, Washington. Other trailers are being loaded with cargo for others. This trailer is parked at a loading dock of the terminal. The trailer is 35 feet long. This trailer is carrying many kinds of cargo. One shipper is sending canned foods. Another shipper is sending automobile parts. A third shipper is sending machinery and tools. The loaders are using hand trucks to carry the cargo into the trailer. This trailer is almost loaded. Soon, the large doors of the trailer will be closed. Truck tractors are parked in another part of the terminal. These tractors are ready to go on long trips. The truck drivers are carrying papers which tell each driver which tractor to use, which trailer to use, what the cargo is, and where it is going. This driver's name is Carl. When he gets into the cab of the tractor, he puts a chart in the speedograph. The speedograph records the speed of the truck and how far it travels. It also records the time at which the truck starts and stops. He also puts a chart in the tachograph. This instrument records the revolutions per minute of the engine. At the end of his day's work, Carl removes both charts. Carl drives the tractor to the filling station at the truck terminal. The attendant will fill the tank with diesel fuel. When the tank is full, Carl will sign a receipt for the fuel. The tractor is ready to pull the loaded trailer. A piece of machinery on the back part of the tractor connects the tractor and trailer together. These are the air hoses for the brakes on the trailer. Carl connects the air hoses to the front of the trailer. The battery in the tractor must be connected to the lights on the trailer. The small wheels under the front of the trailer are called landing gear. The landing gear holds up the front of the trailer when the tractor is not connected. When the tractor is connected to the trailer, its wheels hold up the front of the trailer. The landing gear must be raised out of the way. Now Carl tests the tires. By hitting them with an iron rod, He can tell if the air pressure is right. Drivers are trained to carefully check their tractor and trailer. They are responsible for the safe arrival of the truck and its valuable cargo. The tractor and trailer have been carefully checked. Everything is ready for the long haul. The truck driver watches for signs along the road. This sign says all trucks stop at scales ahead. The truck will stop on the weighing platform. A highway officer reads the weight of the truck on a dial in the weighing station. Truck operators are careful not to overload their trucks. The truck will stop 5 times between Los Angeles and Spokane to change drivers and to refuel. Carl will drive the truck from Los Angeles to Fresno. The second driver will take the truck from Fresno from Redding, California to Chemult, Oregon. The fourth truck driver operates the truck from Chemult to Toppenish, Washington. And the last driver takes the load to the truck terminal in Spokane. It is about 1,200 miles from Los Angeles, California, to Spokane, Washington. Carl drives into the truck station at Fresno. He has been driving for about 7 hours. His day's work is done. Tomorrow he will drive a different truck back to Los Angeles.
Fill it up, check the oil, water, and tires.
This attendant helps to service the truck. He carefully washes the windshield. The truck driver must be able to see clearly at all times. Most truck tractors have diesel engines. A diesel engine is more powerful than a gasoline engine. The tractor needs a powerful engine to pull the heavy load. The attendant measures the amount of oil in the engine. He reads the amount of oil on the oil gauge. The gauge shows that the engine has enough oil. Now the attendant checks the water. He sees that the radiator needs water. He fills the radiator. The water in the radiator helps keep the engine from getting overheated. This attendant is filling the fuel tank. He watches the fuel gauge to tell how many gallons have been put in the tank. The fuel tank holds 80 gallons. The truck used 45 gallons of fuel between Los Angeles and Fresno. While the truck is being serviced, Carl will meet George, the second driver of the truck.
More and more nuclear material is moved from one place to another within the United States each year. The responsibility for the safety and security of these nuclear material shipments rests with various U.S. government agencies: the Energy Research and Development Administration, ERDA, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, and of course the Department of Defense. ERDA, which this film is all about, and the NRC were formed in January 1975 when the old Atomic Energy Commission was reorganized. ERDA is responsible for government-owned special nuclear material, in quantities which have potential weapon applications. The events of the past several years, civil unrest, hijackings, bombings, and other terrorist activities, both worldwide and here in the United States, have increased the concern for the security of nuclear material shipments. The system that has come out of all this is a good one and is considered effective enough to cover almost all contingencies. The program does recognize, however, that an aggressor force that is well enough motivated, manned, and equipped can challenge even the best planned system. Because of this, ERDA has asked for the help of state law enforcement agencies across the country as a kind of first line of defense in emergency situations. To understand what may be requested of you in an emergency, some background on the ERDA organization, program, equipment, and tactics is necessary. Because of the amount of material moved and many years of experience in weapons transport, the Albuquerque Operations Office was selected as the organization responsible for all aspects of the transportation of strategic quantities of government-owned special nuclear material. These, or larger amounts of material, alone or in combination, are considered strategic quantities and must be moved within the ERDA single manager system. To give you an idea of how much material is involved, 2 kilograms, 4½ pounds, of plutonium would be about the size of a pack of cigarettes. For safety protection, it is of course packaged in a much larger container. The Transportation Safeguards Division, a part of the Albuquerque Operations Office, has the primary responsibility for both transportation and protection of special nuclear material. The Technical Support Branch provides electronic system engineering support and staffs and operates CCOM, a nationwide high-frequency radio system which provides for constant communications with shipments throughout the country. This branch also provides liaison with state law enforcement agencies. The Shipment Planning Branch coordinates all movements. Requests for movement of material are consolidated, the means of transportation is determined, and the requirement is passed on to the Safeguards Branch. This branch handles the actual movement of the special nuclear material. Its responsibilities also include the administration and training of the ERDA Courier Force, which accompanies all shipments of special nuclear material which fall within the strategic quantities category. Courier forces are stationed at several locations across the country. The ATMX cars were designed specifically for the movement of special nuclear material. They are very heavy, have a low center of gravity, double locking couplers, and inwardly sloping ends to reduce car damage in the event of a collision, and to prevent the propagation of an explosion from one car to the next. These features, combined with the maximum 35-mile-an-hour speed, makes it almost inconceivable that they would be involved in an accident of sufficient force to rupture the car and expose the material. The escort coaches which accompany the train are fully self-contained, with sleeping quarters, kitchen facilities, and extensive communications equipment. The car is armored to help protect the crew and equipment in the event of an attack. Vans of this type, called ponies, are used to transport small quantities of material that do not fit into the strategic quantities category. Occasionally, because of classification or sensitivity, courier service is required on these shipments also. By far, the most common method of moving strategic quantities of special nuclear material is the courier-escorted tractor-trailer rig. ERDA owns a large fleet of these tractor-trailers. The tractors are armored and equipped with communications gear. The trailer resembles a large standard freight trailer on the outside. Inside, it is practically a rolling vault. The inner compartment, where the cargo is stowed, provides protection to the shipment in an accident and protection from an overt attack as well. A typical convoy consists of the tractor-trailer and one or more escorting vehicles. Each vehicle is manned by 3 couriers. The escort can be either a carry-all or a tactical escort vehicle. The tactical escort vehicle uses a typical recreational vehicle body. It is armored and equipped with communications gear, weapons, ammunition, sleeping quarters, and cooking facilities. Both vehicles are relatively low profile. Equipment in each of the convoy vehicles includes HF radio gear for digital and voice communications with CCOM via the relay sites, VHF gear for communications within the convoy, portable radios and pagers for use when courier personnel are away from their vehicles at fueling or food stops. Each courier has his own .357 Magnum sidearm, and the vehicles are stocked with M16 rifles, 12-gauge shotguns, and 40-millimeter grenade launchers. Other equipment includes radiation detection instruments, foul weather gear, gas masks. ERDA courier drivers are well trained and must continue to demonstrate driving proficiency throughout their career. Unsafe or illegal driving is not tolerated. If the tractor driver is stopped by a law enforcement officer for any reason, a unique problem is raised. Since the tractor is armored, the couriers have been instructed not to open the cab door until they are absolutely sure that security can be maintained. To handle this situation, the courier will display his picture identification card at the window and repeat the following message over the vehicle's public address system.
I'm a federal officer with the Energy Research and Development Administration in custody of sensitive material. I'm not permitted to open the door of this vehicle. I will remain stopped while you contact my supervisor in the escort vehicle to the rear.
The escort vehicles operate close enough to the tractor trailer to be on the scene by the time the truck is stopped. When the supervisor has identified the officer, the couriers in the truck will dismount if necessary. ERDA couriers are extensively trained and must meet high medical fitness standards, including mental and emotional stability, for annual certification under a human reliability program. Each courier must pass the ERDA driver school for all types of vehicles. He must qualify quarterly with his personal sidearm and other assigned weapons. Couriers are authorized by the Atomic Energy Act to carry firearms, including automatic weapons, in the normal pursuit of their jobs nationwide. Basic courier training is a 6-week course, which is followed by a year of on-the-job training, then 2 weeks of advanced training. With this as a background, let's look at situations that could require your help. In the first instance, if communications with the convoy is lost, or if a convoy does not report in at a specified time, the state police in the area would be asked to begin a search for the missing vehicles. While in most cases this is not a true emergency, it must be treated as if it were until proved otherwise. In the event of a genuine emergency, such as an armed attack on the convoy, the following actions would take place. One of the couriers would activate the emergency switch on the control panel. The digital message would be transmitted via relay to CCOM Control Center in Albuquerque. CCOM Control will react to the emergency message by notifying ERDA management and calling the predetermined state law enforcement agency in the state where the shipment is located. The FBI and other government agencies would then be notified. Basically, ERDA is requesting state law enforcement agencies to provide assistance from available forces in 7 categories which do not require special training or equipment. However, if the particular state has specially trained forces, such as SWAT or TACT teams, special weapons or equipment, such as all-purpose vehicles or aircraft, their use in such an emergency may be requested. The first officer on the scene should join with one of the couriers to establish a joint command post. This will enhance friend-foe identification. CCOM Control will keep an open telephone line to state headquarters. The officer at the scene will be given a handy-talkie radio so that he will have communications with other couriers on the scene, and he will also have radio communications via his car radio with his own headquarters. The second area of assistance would be to set up roadblocks around the emergency site to contain the attackers and prevent innocent bystanders from becoming involved in a possible shooting situation. Third, ERDA requests that the on-scene state officer direct the deployment and activities of any other law enforcement personnel, including sheriffs and city police, as they arrive on the scene. Fourth, the officers on the scene may be asked to provide additional firepower at the request of the courier in charge. Fifth, the officer at the scene should request medical assistance when and as necessary. And sixth, help secure the area until the convoy is regrouped and ready to travel. If the special nuclear material is lost to the attackers, the FBI has responsibility and assumes control of the recovery operation. You may also be asked to assist them in their operations. Among the other resources the FBI has available in a situation of this type is ERDA's NEST, or Nuclear Emergency Search Team. NEST teams have equipment which can locate nuclear material. The situations which have been suggested here have not happened, not yet anyway, but they could. And if they do, the terrorist group trying to grab nuclear material will be well prepared and deadly serious. The organizations which respond to a threat of this kind must be equally serious and determined if we are to prevent nuclear blackmail or large-scale loss of life and property. As members of a state law enforcement agency, you have significant roles to play in helping to maintain control of special nuclear material. Your quick response in an emergency can materially reduce the threats of radical and dissident groups.